What course would you have me set, Shay?
Time to report back to the mentor. Wouldn't you agree?
Wise words, Captain. Wise words.
This game was an odd sight to see on the Creed franchise list. Usually when Ubisoft wants to throw out a spin-off of their popular games, they turn to a handheld developer or cobble it together themselves out of dead horses and theater textbooks. But seeing a full-on console release spin-off is something different entirely. Is this going to be a hidden gem of the series that helps to justify this long project of reviewing assassinations? Even before I asked this question, I already had 2 sessions with the game, so let's find out. Since Rogue is a spin-off of the Creed franchise, it gets to break some of the series' rules, and possibly comes away from the drawing table with the most interesting framing device plot. The game starts off with Totally Not Ubisoft LLC being thrown into a panic as an unnamed virus is tearing through the company's data and shutting down everything. This craziness happened because FaZe was given a new project to sift through some new characters' memories, which somehow triggered the virus's immersion, and therefore everything's fallen to shit. However, Abstergo thinks this is really weird, so they sent in some of their subcontractors, this girl and this old Russian guy, who take FaZe under their wing temporarily, so they can work on this new memory stuff, which explains why all the other employees were sent home for the day. Wink. The new memories FaZe is working with are with a new assassin named Shay Cormac, whose story predates Assassin's Creed 3, and he's working with the currently stable American assassins led by Achilles Davenport, Connor's mentor from AC3. The assassins are looking for more precursor artifacts, but you probably knew that already because Ubisoft's games are so damned predictable. But to be fair, the plot devices today are a book and a box, which put together reveals the locations of a bunch of Apples of Eden, and as you can probably tell from this footage, Rogue is aping a lot of Assassin's Creed 3's style. Now, I won't accuse Ubisoft of being hackjob shysters. Their ultimate crime really is that they need to realize that as the genre leader, it's their job to innovate and steer sandbox games in general, and they are too comfortable in pumping out the same old shit, to the point that being a sandbox game carries as much weight nowadays as a game being on Steam. But with Rogue specifically, Ubisoft is developing it entirely with spare parts, which is why Rogue can be more accurately titled Assassin's Creed 3.5, like how Brotherhood is Assassin's Creed 2.5. A ton of Rogue's mechanics and style is simply taken from both Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 4. The ship sailing mechanics, salvaging stuff at sea, the at-sea minigames and collectibles, the shops, and a lot of the game's side quests seem familiar, if not directly attributable, to a different game in its series. Add into that the art style, the user interface, the controls, and you have a game that is suffering from a huge identity problem. And what Rogue adds in to try and be unique is not helping the game find a unique selling point. Shay Cormac is a boring character with little personality, no real motivations, and not much that makes him distinct or remarkable once I finish this game. I did have to laugh at one point when Shay was talking about how much of a ladies' man he was in his earlier days, because I was trying to imagine what Shay was doing in his off time that would make the ladies come to him in such droves. He's such a dull nonce with no swashbuckling stories under his belt that he must have been handing out cocaine for free or managed to have the most outgoing best friend on the planet. Voice acting can really make or break a character's appeal in a video game, and just like with Aveline in AC4's DLC, Shay's voice actor is trying too hard and going for an authentic Scottish accent that he forgot to put any charisma behind it.
I can't change the past, but maybe there's a future for me here. And maybe, just maybe, I can do what's right this time.
You can pretty much lump in all the characters into this game next to Shay for how much presence they have on screen. None of the characters pop, they don't have much appeal or much to add to this game as a whole, and seem to be there more as an obligation in telling the story rather than actually having a desire to tell any of their stories. Shay and his brother's teacher is a stereotypical angry drill sergeant type who hates Shay because the cliched book told him to, and then there's the wise Native American who adds as much to Rogue as adding another tree into the background, and the by-the-books too cool for the boys girl character who's better than everybody else because typical girl power message. To be fair to Grace, or Fate, or whatever the hell her name was, out of this roster, she's probably the best we're going to get, while being a forgettable female character. Achilles is so non-existent in this story that he shouldn't be here, and even Haytham Kenway, my personal favorite, doesn't get much in the way of care and detail he got in AC3. Actually, now that I'm writing this, just like that Turkish bloke from Revelations helped to prop up that shell of a game, Shay does meet a right-hand man early in Rogue's second half that stole the show and made me wonder why he wasn't the main character, but damned if I can remember his name. But he was a pretty cool dude. Anyway, while we're on the subject, let's talk about what Rogue tried to do to get some name recognition going. You can tell pretty early on what Rogue is going for. They wanted to make this game the first one to feature a Templar protagonist, but not just a Templar, but also one who betrayed the assassins on his own terms. At the end of the game's first act, and a couple assassinations down the line, bringing both of the precursor artifacts to the American assassins, Shay is then ordered to head to Lisbon to track down one of the Apples of Eden on the magic map. He does that pretty easily with no resistance, touches the apple, it disintegrates in his hands, and then this happens. Yeah, that's some messed up shit right there. So after magically surviving the earthquake that killed thousands and thousands in Lisbon, assumingly, Shay returns to the assassins, who are actually quite irate with Shay over his report of Lisbon's destruction, to the point that Achilles is actually angry that Shay returned empty-handed, even as another report comes in from a different assassin that inadvertently destroyed Haiti. Shay argues that the apples should be left alone for obvious reasons, but the assassins push on in digging them up. Shay, in fearing for the worst, tries to steal the book and flees the assassins, leading to them shooting Shay and leaving him for dead. But Shay survived his cliffside fall because of how this franchise's plot works. One of the worst things about how this game flips from assassins to Templars is because it happens with the assassins being the stupidest jerkbags in all of the video games. The assassins have no reason to want the artifacts other than the plot says so, and therefore this change that Ubisoft wanted to mean everything to the player comes off as hollow, token, and as crowbarred in as possible. Achilles and his powerful network at the time didn't even want to take the few days to check that Lisbon had been destroyed and just assumed that Shay was wrong, leading to this idiotic betrayal. What ends up making the whole second half twist worse is that it starts off with Shay waking up from his injury with amnesia, meaning that this whole spectacular change from Assassin to Templar only happens because the Templars got to Shay first. Also, that just like the protagonist change in AC3, the assassins in the second half of Rogue are now mind-bogglingly evil for no fathomable idea. Okay, maybe Ubisoft is just a hackneyed writing company, because the assassins in Rogue's second half are committing legitimate crimes and controlling entire parts of New York City like the goddamn Mafia, to the point that the NPCs in the game that aren't Templars are actively wishing that they were dead and buried. Thankfully, Shay has the skills to pursue that goal, and so starts with one of Rogue's predictable side quests. Say it with me, everyone. Liberating the districts for no reward. And this is where we see more follies with Ubisoft trying to make a game in which the assassins are the antagonists. What I mean by this is that the assassin ninjas can fuck right off. I don't know why, but apparently Ubisoft thought that all this time throughout all these games, the bench and crowd blending and all that traditional stealth stuff in the series actually makes assassins literally invisible, because trying to find the ninjas in this game is stupidly difficult and aggravating because what Ubisoft wanted to happen with the assassin ninjas was that Shay was supposed to use his eagle vision to find them hiding in typical places, but you'll more likely be finding them when they decide to randomly jump on you from their invisibility cloak, since the eagle vision's detection will just happen to miss them when you are looking directly at their hiding place. It also gets fucking irritating, since one of the game's helpful mechanics is that the entire screen glows at you when there's a ninja around, which totally isn't garish at all, and what ultimately puts the nail in the coffin is that finding the ninjas is actually pretty pointless. You can fend them off with a not fast QTE, and since the game makes it so damned obvious that they're around, well, what's the damn point in having them there in the first place? There's no story requirements for liberating any of these districts, and trying to do so requires so many steps and so much required stealth that it's more practical to just say fuck it and let New York City continue to drown in completely unrealistic levels of crime. Although the few fingers that Shay does lift to help attracts the attention of a well-meaning high-level Templar in NYC, who easily recruits Shay to his side of thinking, since these assassins are from some subgroup of them that just bastardize the whole Creed concept. You want to explain to me how one of the assassin tenets is to not harm the innocent, and yet you have assassins in this town that are actively robbing random people? Another helpful convenience besides Shay meeting one of the level-headed Templars is that Shay's ship just happens to be docked in the harbor right next to the house of the people who cared for him after his accident. Are you sure that this isn't just lazy writing? Nah. Since the assassins in this half of the game are depicted as crazed criminals, the second half mostly consists of Shay's Templar buddy and his new crew, pointing him towards Shay's old friends who keep committing crimes and doing diabolical crap that Shay adopts the moniker of the assassin killer to balance the morality scales. Hell, that girl character from earlier in this video is running actual poison factories in New York City. Like actual chemical weapons and crap in town. Yeah, the assassins are going to have some explaining to do on that one. On the way, Shay will be getting back the book and the box to stop more of the Earth's destructions at the hand of the assassins. Honestly, the second half of this game isn't actually that remarkable and just kind of lackadaisically ticks off the assassin order like Altair did in the Levantine Rite until Shay accidents himself into the final part of the game, which is stopping the rest of the assassins at the Apple of Eden Temple on America's east side. And again, I'm just getting that little bit of the feeling on the back of my neck that this seems slightly ripped off from the observatory level in Black Flag. Just a little bit, though. The final kill on Shay's to-do list is actually his brother, and after a bit of running around and substandard parkour, Shay again accidents himself into offing his brother and maintaining his good guy image, because they both fell off a waterfall cliff and Shay was the only one who survived because video games. Hatham agrees to not kill Achilles, but does shoot him in the leg, and that miraculously doesn't kill him to allow Assassin's Creed 3 to make sense. America is safe for now, as one of the roots of the world has been buried behind a glacier. At the end of the game, Assassin's Creed Rogue was a decent idea to star a Templar as a protagonist that hunts down assassins to totally shake up the formula, but the promise wasn't delivered on. Many of Rogue's elements are borrowed from Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 to the point that Rogue doesn't have an identity of its own. The story is poorly conceived with little spectacle, the characters don't have presence in their cutscenes, and the gameplay mechanics aren't interesting enough to outdo the games that they are borrowed from. The whole transformation from Assassin to Templar and the quintessential betrayal relies on so much character stupidity and utter nonsense that it feels as forced as a beaver into a brick wall. The game isn't terrible, but it's also pretty short with few worthwhile collectibles and a pretty flimsy group of side quests that won't keep your time. Comparatively, the framing device plot, which usually ends up being the most bullshit part of these games, is actually pretty good. FaZe is roped into a Templar plot at his workplace and has to work with a couple of shady people who allude to some bigger things happening at Abstergo, and after revealing the locations of the roots of the world through Shay Cormac and his motivations to turning to the Templars, FaZe himself is rewarded for his work by formally becoming a Templar, something that could have big consequences down the road of the series. And while all of that stuff I mentioned was the juicy bits of this game, it also shows why Rogue fails to stand on its own 2 feet. It's a setup game. Rather than having any big set pieces or crucial plot twists in itself, it mainly stands to just set up some changes that may have some payoff in a different game. Rogue serves as another example of why these long-term game franchises need to actually have their games finish their plots and not just serve as advertisements for future games in the series. It ends up making a bunch of substandard games on the hope that one game 3 titles down the line will be the masterpiece that justifies the game setting them up being dull and wastes of time. But then again, Ubisoft is the king of tell don't show writing, so I'm not expecting much from the latter half of the Creed series, honestly. Who knows, they might surprise me, but considering that Unity is next on the chopping block, just don't hold your breath on that one. I do need you around for next week's video, okay? But to cap off this one, let's get the scores on the screen. And I can't forget to give you guys a victory for gamers. Thanks for watching.